Hi, everyone. Let's get started. That's the old bio.
Oh, so sorry.
No problem. Good morning, everyone. For those coming in, there's plenty of seats. Just make sure you use sanitizer first. Today we are talking about proving the ROI of social media. How do we do this? If you feel at any point you've fallen behind on something, or they've just locked the doors and you have friends who are waiting outside, the entire presentation has been pre-recorded, and conveniently, if you're asking where can I get the slides, you can just go get it at wherecanIgettheslides.com. I'll give you a moment to take that. All right. Let's talk about social media's biggest problem. In the 2020 CMO survey released 6 days ago, when chief marketing officers were asked, what are you doing with social media? Here's the spend right now. Social media is 13% of marketing's budget, second highest point in the 7-year history of the survey. We're spending a lot of money on social media. And by the way, this is just on mostly hard dollar costs. How much more are we going to spend? That's up to 62% more in the next 5 years. That's an awful lot of money to be spending on social media. What are we doing with that money? 24% of CMOs say it's going to outside agencies. Out of curiosity, how many of you are in-house? Raise your hands. Wow, that's more than usual. How many are your agency? Okay, so there's a big brand and in-house crowd this year. Awesome. And what are we doing? What else are we doing with the money? It's not people. And when asked, CMOs have said that they have actually decreased the number of people working in-house on social media. This room is the exception, apparently. So we're spending more. We're hiring fewer people. How does that impact our performance? Social media continues to contribute little to company performance. Right? And on a scale of 1 to 7, social media scores a 3.4. That's not good news for us. Right? The CMO is saying, I guess it works. When asked, can you explain the impact of social media on your business? This is a very confusing chart, so we'll simplify it. 70% of CMOs said social media marketers cannot prove the value of their work. So we're spending more, we're not delivering impact, and we can't prove the impact we're delivering. When CEOs were asked in a Price Waterhouse survey, how do you feel about revenue growth in the next 2 years? A rapid reversal of fortune in just the last year. Most CEOs are pessimistic about company growth. When looking at the OECD Composite Leading Indicator Index, we are at the lowest point of economic optimism since the Great Recession. And by the way, all this data as of January, before this little pandemic we're having. So, spending more than ever, getting fewer results, they can't prove it. How's this going to end for us? Not great, right? So we need to fix this. How do we fix this? Well, first let's talk about what the impacts are going to be. Number one, your ability to generate results will be lower and lower. You heard some of that on the keynote stage this morning, right? Organic reach, lower than ever. We'll talk about that more on the ROI side in a bit. But more than anything, this is in your immediate future. In that same PwC survey, when CEOs were asked, what are you going to do to stimulate revenue growth in your company? A staggering 87% said, we're going to optimize efficiencies, find efficiencies, which is code word for we're fired. Right? Budget cuts, downsizing. So how do we fix this? We start with the reason you're here, social media ROI. Now, out of curiosity, how many of you know the mathematical formula for ROI? Okay, so this is new. This is not new to those of you who raised your hands. You may now resume playing games. We first want to start with understanding what social media is, which seems like a strange thing to say at a social media conference, right? What is social media? Most of us think it's this stuff, Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and Snapchat and all that stuff, right? These are social networks, but this is not social media. Way, way, way back, a guy by the name of Bob Metcalfe wrote a mathematical formula called Metcalfe's Law, network effects. If you have a phone and you're the only person in the world with a phone, that phone is pretty much not helpful, right? Because there's literally no one for you to call. Every time a person gets a phone, there's now an additional person for you, the original phone owner, to be able to call. That's a network effect. Every time somebody does something that benefits the entire network, that is a network effect. A blog is not social media. Right? It doesn't matter how many readers of this blog there are. If you read this post and you get value out of it, your value does not increase the more people read the blog. It's the same thing. On the other hand, if you're on Twitter and you only have one friend, Twitter's a sad and lonely place. Right? The more people who are connected to you and that you are connected with, the more value everybody gets. That is social media. That is a social network. Which means that if you are measuring social media by how many Facebook likes you get or how many people follow you on TikTok, you're missing a huge number of social networks. These are social networks. YouTube is a social network. Quora is a social network. Sina Weibo, Slack, Twitch, 500 Pixels, Stack Overflow. If you're in B2B IT and you're not on Spiceworks, you're insane. Pokemon Go, Discord, Pornhub, GitHub, all of these are social networks because the value that everybody gets is commensurate to the value that you put in as a user. When you're looking in your Google Analytics or your Adobe Analytics or whatever, and you're not looking at these networks that could be sending you traffic, you are missing a huge chunk of your ROI. You are missing a huge chunk of your results. One of the top networks that sends traffic to my site is Slack, because we run a Slack instance. We run our own. It's called Analytics for Marketers. 1,000 people in it, conversations just about analytics for marketers. That does more to help conversion than pretty much any of the mainstream social networks. So one of your takeaways from today is to go and find the social network for your industry. Right? What is it? Is it Stack Overflow? If you're into photography and you're not on 500 Pixels, you've missed the boat. If there isn't a social network for your industry, you have a rare opportunity to be it. Right? You can download some open source software, set up a server, and run your own. And guess what? Then it's yours. You don't have to share it with anybody. You certainly don't have to put any money in Zuckerberg's pocket. So that's social media. Let's talk about ROI. ROI is simple: return on investment. This is a comparative financial measure to gauge efficiency. That is what ROI is. Let's unpack this. First, it is a financial measure, and it's a very simple formula. Earned minus spent divided by spent is return on investment, ROI. Except no substitutes. Lots of people, some of them friends of mine, have these lovely phrases like return on influence and return on relationship and emotion stuff, and those are fun. They make great book titles. But in terms of the ability to measure them, they are what our Spanish friends would call excremento de toro. We want to focus on the math behind ROI. Suppose, for example, you ran a campaign and you earned $1,000 and you spent $500. That's the computation. You would have made a 100% return on investment. You put $1 in the machine and $2 comes out. That's what 100% ROI means. Suppose you ran that same campaign but you only earned $250. Your ROI is minus 50%. Right? You put $1 in the machine, 50 cents comes out. ROI is a math formula. If you're not doing it, it's not coming out looking like this, you're not doing ROI. Second, it is a comparative measure to gauge efficiency. So when you see something like Facebook has a minus 25% ROI, okay, you know Facebook's not working well for you, but there's no context to this. Right? This doesn't have any meaning, it's just a number. But when you compare it to something like 14% ROI on Twitter, or 147% on Google Ads, now you have a basis for comparison. With ROI, you must be comparing it to something else, either another channel or time itself, watching your ROI over time. Avoid the temptation to just have that single number standing out there by itself. The ROI of our social media is 47%. Great, compared to what? The purpose and function of ROI is to help you make decisions. So you need to have that comparison. Second, avoid the temptation to treat ROI as a goal. It's not a very good goal. It is a measure of efficiency. It's like looking at how many RPMs your car's engine is going at, right? That's not how you drive the car. You drive the car to a destination, the little, I don't even know what that gauge is called, tells you how efficiently the engine is working. You can have 100% ROI and completely screw up, right? If I earned $2 and I spent $1, great, I have 100% ROI, but my CEO said I needed to make $1 million, so I'm fired. Right? I hit my ROI, but I completely failed the objective. So ROI is not a goal most of the time. Why would you use this then if it's not a goal? Return on investment is best used when you have limited resources, when you have limited budgets and you need to squeeze every ounce of performance out of that limited budget. You want to find what's most efficient and cut ruthlessly the things that are not efficient because you only have a certain amount of dollars to work with. That is the best use of ROI, figuring out the efficiencies. When don't you use ROI? Number one, when you are doing experimentation, when you're trying new things, put ROI away. Tell your CFO, guess what, we're going to do a bunch of things, it'll cost this much, and expect zero return because we're experimenting, we're trying to learn, we're trying to grow. Experimentation is one of the 3 best areas to just throw ROI away and forget that it exists. If you try to measure the ROI of an experiment, you'll just frustrate yourself. Second, for those of us who are in the startup world, an awful lot of the time, we want growth. We don't necessarily care about efficiency, particularly if a VC just handed you $1 billion and said, go play, which still happens an astonishing amount of time. But when you are focusing on growth, building audiences, building subscribers, getting lead generation even, and growth is a priority, it's okay to be inefficient in those cases. Not like negligent, but inefficient. So that's the second case where you would have no reason to be using ROI. If your targets are growth, focus on the growth. Third, ROI is irrelevant when you have a non-financial outcome. If you are, for example, running for office, there's a very measurable outcome. You're elected or you're not, right? But there is no ROI because it's not a financial objective, unless you're talking about the bribes and stuff afterwards. Nonprofits looking for volunteers, campaigns looking for advocates, any of these things that have a non-dollar outcome, do not use ROI. Because again, you'll frustrate yourself. Or you'll do something which is horrendously bad, and you'll try to find a dollar equivalent measure. There's a term in the world of public relations called add value equivalence that will get you punched in the face by most PR practitioners because it attempts to measure the value of like inches of paper in a newspaper, right? That was an industry's attempt to create a financial measure for something as a non-financial outcome. So those are the 3 cases when you do not want to use ROI. Next, how do you compute this thing? Remember, it's pretty straightforward. Earned minus spent divided by spent. That seems like first grade math. If you can't do some, well, second grade if you get to division. You need 3 things. You need time, you need what you earned, and what you spent. Let's talk about time first. How long should you measure ROI in? Generally speaking, if you know the length of your sales cycle, try measuring around 2x. So from first touch to dollars in the bank, however long that is, 5 days, 7 days, 3 months, 2 years, if you go 2x that window, you're going to catch 95% of the outliers and that will help you get the biggest possible window for ROI computation. So that's your time frame. It's going to vary. Every single person in this room is going to have a different measure for your company because your company is unique and different in how long your sales cycle is. It will even vary depending on your sales team. I do a lot of work in B2B, and B2B sales departments churn like crazy, which means that a company may have a 44-day sales cycle 1 year, but because Bob was in sales and Bob was drunk all the time, we fired Bob. Their sales cycle shrunk down to 14 days because Tim managed to call people back without being drunk. So even that you have to keep in mind that can change that window. Second, you need to know how much you've earned. This sounds like it should be easy, but it's really, really not. And the reason it's not is because we typically do not have full funnel visibility as marketers, especially for social media marketers. We don't know what's coming out of the other end of the funnel. By the way, for clarity, When we say funnel, we're talking about measurement internally. Customers do not obey funnels. Suppose you had this standard sort of complex sale funnel, right? Most of us in social media, probably our responsibility stops either at prospects or marketing qualified leads, right? For the most part, very, 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 very few of us have responsibility towards down to the bottom. But we need those numbers down there to know how much we've earned. So there's a way to get to that for what we do in social media marketing, and that is to essentially figure out what is the value of a person at each stage in the funnel. So let's dig through this. First, what is your customer lifetime value? Your CFO should have this. What's your customer acquisition cost? Your CFO should have that. Subtract the two, you get what's called net customer value. In an example, suppose your customer value is $100,000. Maybe you sell, I don't know, Teslas. And your cost to acquire a customer is $10,000. Your net customer value is $90,000. So at that very bottom of that funnel, you know what the value of a customer is. Let's take a step up. Net customer value times your sales closing rate. Hey, you got this Tesla, but Bob in sales is still drunk a lot of the time, so he only closes a quarter of the sales. So a net deal value of a potential person who could buy that Tesla is only $22,500, right? Because we're losing 3 out of 4. There's an efficiency problem. Cool. Let's step up once more from deal closing rate to get to sales qualified lead. And by the way, these steps are not the same for every company. You're going to need to do this for your company, whatever your sales funnel is. Even if it is something as simple as number of feet walking past the end cap in a grocery store and the number of 3-year-olds that grab something off the shelf and throw it in the cart. It's never happened to me. In this case, our deal closing rate, 0.75, so our sales qualified lead value, $16,875. We are not, some of our sales qualified leads, not the best, right? Maybe they weren't ready to buy a Tesla. Maybe they were just shopping around. Go up one more step, looking at our lead qualification rate, and we get to our marketing qualified lead value, right? $16,875. But our marketing qualified leads are actually not all that qualified. A bunch of people were just having fun, filling out forms on the website. They're not real buyers. So that makes our effective value for a marketing qualified lead $4,200. Go up one more level to prospects. And we have a whole bunch of jokers who are just hitting the call me now button on the website. Only 1% of people who actually do that actually ever intend on buying something. You end up with $42 per prospect. Now, why would you have to go through this ridiculous mess? The reason you do this is because when you use software like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, there's an opportunity to measure goals on your website and put a dollar value goal in that field, like so. If you know the value of a prospect or a lead, you can put that in here, and now Google Analytics is no longer just a web analytics tool. Now it is a financial forecasting tool that tells you the estimated revenue that you're likely to see. In this example here, social media is worth, for my website, $22. Based on people's activities, I am likely to earn $22 from this period of time on my website, which means that now in that earned minus spent divided by spent, I have an earned number. I have an earned number. And oh, by the way, bonus, Google Analytics then will track the values of everything in every channel and give you earned numbers per channel as well. It's a super handy tool, but it needs you to do that absurd amount of math just to figure out what to put in the goal value. Because except for those of you who do e-commerce, you're not going to have the actual dollar values in Google Analytics. If you do e-commerce, it'll be in there. So we've answered how long should we be doing this. We've answered what have we earned forecasting it using Google Analytics. Let's talk about how much you're going to spend. You're going to spend 2 types of money, hard money and soft money. For those of you in the US or use the dollar currency, hard dollar and soft dollar. And this is where almost all ROI computations go completely off the rails. Right? This is where we screw up everything because we only track hard dollars. Hard dollars means you take money and hand it to Mark Zuckerberg to run ads. Right? You have spent money, you no longer have that money to spend. Soft dollars are your time it takes to do social media. So you need to know how much you're spending. You start with your salary, if you're a salaried employee. If you're an hourly employee, you know what you earn per hour. Divide by 2,080 working hours per year, and that is effectively your hourly rate, right? Every hour that you spend on social media, you are spending soft dollars that you could have been doing something else for the company, right? Every hour you're making a content calendar is an hour you're not sending out emails, or is an hour you're not talking to customers. So you are spending soft dollars on social media. Have an actual worksheet if you want to make a copy of this from Google Slides. Just go to wherecanIgettheslides.com, and it's one of the links on the download page, so you can plug these numbers in. There's also, at least here in the United States where our healthcare system is badly broken, you have to account for things like healthcare costs being 20% of your overhead, so that has to come into computation as well. Your salary in the United States is only about 2/3 of an actual employee's cost. There's about 5% more overhead. So when you do your ROI computations, you need to have that earned minus spent divided by spent. Right? You know how much you spend on hard dollars and soft dollars. You now have what you've earned. You should be able to get your ROI. The number one question people ask is, what's a good ROI? That's pretty easy. Anything above 0. Again, we're not trying, this is not a goal or a game. This is attempting just to measure how efficient we are. So anything where when you put money in the machine, if more money comes back than you put in, good. And the more that comes back, the better. So how do we improve our ROI? Second question. Fundamentally, you have 2 levers, right? Because it's a real simple formula. You can either earn more or spend less. Earning more, there's a lot of really good sessions here at this conference about making the most of your social media and getting impact out of it. Spending less, the number one place you will save on social media is your soft dollar savings. You, the human, are the most expensive part of most social media programs. On the social media marketing world community on Facebook that folks were chatting in extensively before the show, I think Fiona Lucas asked, how much time do you spend on social media calendars? And a bunch of folks said, hey, I spend 2 to 3 hours a week on this, and 2 to 3 hours a week on this, and 2 to 3 hours a week on this. And that number kept coming up over and over again, 2 to 3 hours. If you earned, say, $250 in revenue, and you spent $100 on Facebook ads, and you have an employee spending 2 to 3 hours a week, when they make $30 an hour, you have a minus 67% ROI. Right? That is a massive loss, and you should immediately be tasked that employee to do something else, because it's just not a good idea to be burning money like that. Now, on the other hand, if you have automation capabilities, if you have good systems, good software, maybe a good agency, and you instead spend 5 to 10 minutes a week, which is what I do because I'm a complete nerd and I write my own software because I have nothing better to do on Saturdays, that same earnings delivers an 81% ROI because I'm spending 5 minutes a week, not 2 to 3 hours a week. So when we talk about ROI, you are also talking about process management. How are you investing your time in social media? Most of us, most of the time, are wasting our time. When we have run this analysis for clients, I have yet to see a client on organic, unpaid social media to break even on organic social media. It's to the point now where for most clients, it's not worth their time. Just automate some of it, answer questions as they come up, and spend their time elsewhere, which is kind of an awkward thing to say at a social media conference. Like, don't bother with social media. But don't bother with inefficient social media. I will warn you. Well, there's a bunch of warnings, but if you work at a company where there's a culture of risk aversion and people are not comfortable with the truth, do not run an ROI computation. Do not. Just go with the flow, tell the CEO whatever they want to hear, and update your LinkedIn profile. So, let's talk about what you'll do wrong with ROI the first few times you try to run it. First, you will try to treat it as a goal. It is not a goal. Don't do that. Second, you will spend a lot of time on the hard dollars and not enough time on the soft dollars. And that's really difficult. I don't know, how many people here are not from America? Just raise your hands. Okay, so a few of you. So for those few of you who raised your hands, there's a bizarre taboo in America of not talking about your income, which means that when you try to do cost computations for how much does an employee cost, it gets very uncomfortable. So sometimes that data may not be available. So just bear that in mind for those of you who are in that. And one of my biggest bugaboos is this: return on ad spend is not return on investment. They are completely and totally separate and different formulas. Okay? Return on investment is fundamentally, what is the cost of profit? Right? How much did it cost us to make this profit? Whereas return on ad spend is simply how efficient is the ad spend. Return on ad spend does not take into account opportunity cost. It does not take into account time. It does not take into account any of these things that we talked about. It only takes into account the hard dollar spend. That's why when people say, like, your return on ad spend should never go below 400%, that's because an awful lot of the time, there's no opportunity cost in there. And if you go below 400% return on ad spend, there's a good chance you're in negative ROI territory because of how much time it takes you or how much you're spending with your agencies. So keep these two separate. So, to recap, return on investment is a comparative financial measure to gauge efficiency. It is not effectiveness. It is not a goal. It is just about efficiency. How efficient are you at spending the dollars and resources you have? If you do not have good social media governance in your company, you cannot do ROI computations because you will have no idea what people are spending their time on. Like, if you do not track people's time and have timesheets and stuff in your company on what social media employees are doing, you cannot do ROI because you literally have no idea how much they're spending time-wise. And people are really, really bad judges of how much time they spend on something. I remember I used to work at an agency years ago, and we would ask the account coordinator, how much time did you spend making your client's social media calendar? Like, 15 minutes? But then you look at the timesheet, it was 4.5 hours. It's like, so which was it? Like, either you're lying in one place. People are really bad at tracking their time unless they have a system in place. So if you don't have systems for managing your employees, you won't be able to do ROI. And again, it's comparative. Also remember, you only have 2 levers to improve ROI. This is why it's not a good goal, because you can literally do one of 2 things. And because one of those 2 things also can potentially endanger your job, aka spend less, you may not want to go down that route, right? Focus on the business goals first. Are you generating the leads that sales is asking you for? Are you getting shopping cart checkouts? Are you getting more people to show up at the places that they care about? What is the business outcome that you care about? Then use ROI just to tune. Most of the time when you want to use the impact of ROI, it's not going to be on social media. Overall, it's going to be channel by channel. What is Facebook doing for us? What is Twitter doing for us? And if you want to get sophisticated, it may even be, what are different techniques? So what is Facebook retargeting doing for us? What are Facebook lookalikes doing for us? That's the great use of ROI, is tuning down the tactics, the individual techniques within something, not the big picture. The big picture, you can't make a decision from that, right? Other than to say, let's fire the social media person, and nobody wants that in this room. So think about any time that you're using any kind of measure, whether it's ROI or business outcomes, what goal are you trying to achieve? And what decision are you going to make from that information? The first time you hand an ROI report to your manager or your CEO or whatever, they will probably look at it, go, and then move on to the next thing, which means they didn't make a decision, which means that all that effort you put into reporting ROI was kind of a waste of time. So ask yourself, as you're building your reports, as you're constructing the information, what decision do I want my stakeholder to make? Do I want them to say, yes, let's stop posting 42 times a day on Twitter? Do I want them to say, let's stop wasting 6 hours a week on content calendars? Do I want them to say, let's stop being in 44 meetings about social media every week? What decision do you want? Then you back into, is ROI the right comparative measure to help someone make that decision? What decision do you want somebody to make? Do you want them to boost earnings? How are you going to do that? Right? Ask them, we want to try TikTok. Do you want them to spend less? Hey, we want to just move all of our content curation to automation and just take out the humans so that we can spend time doing something else. That's the use of ROI. Again, this session was recorded, so you can feel free to grab the slides. There's an extra talk I'm doing at this event on tomorrow at 2:20 on Data Science 101. So if you want to swing by room 26B, we only have 50 seats, so come early or be prepared to throw some elbows. Thank you very much.
That was awesome.